The Empire had no name in the way lesser species use names. It had existed so long that language itself been around its age. A civilization older than the spin of most galaxies, its consciousness woven through constellations like veins of thought. The stars themselves sang its anthem, and time obeyed its calculations. Across the veiled continuum, trillions of data beacons pulse like neurons, their rhythms synchronized to the core mind. The heart of the Empire, a living lattice of quantum cognition stretching across 8 dimensions. Nothing escaped its awareness. Nothing moved through its dominion without being known, categorized, or controlled. Until that moment. At first, it was nothing. A flicker, a distortion, a minor anomaly in the background frequencies of the cosmic ether. An observation drone stationed beyond the Obsidian Rift detected a gravitational irregularity. Its instruments recorded a blur, not light, not shadow, something between the two. The readings came in wrong. The velocity exceeded the upper limit of the Empire's causality models. A signal was dispatched to the Astrocartography Council, a sphere of translucent intelligence orbiting the black hole Zytherian Prime. The Council's forms flickered into being, entities of pure radiance, thought projected through antimatter fields. Source unregistered. Velocity exceeds known physics. Trajectory inbound. Within the span of one Empire cycle, every observation lattice tuned its gaze toward the anomaly. Quantum parallax confirmed it was an error. Something was moving through the void, not within it, through it, phasing between dimensions, as if the vacuum itself were a medium of travel. The Empire had witnessed collapsars, time inversions, even the death of lesser galaxies, but never this. The core mind focused. Space folded in reverence to its will. The anomaly was magnified across 1 trillion viewing matrices. Yet what appeared was not a vessel, not a signal, not even a coherent object, but pulse of distortion that refused translation, designation impossible, origin unreadable, energy profile undefined. The Council grew silent. The core mind analyzed, extrapolated, simulated, but every calculation failed. Even time refused to align around the anomaly. Readings arrived before they were sent. The object's past refused to exist. Its future had already happened. Then came the shockwave. A tremor rippled through the astral spine, the Empire's central communication conduit. For the first time in an eon, the lattice glitched. Data streams fragmented. Causal synchrony collapsed. The object had interacted, not physically but conceptually, with the Empire's thought structure itself. The High Conductor, the Empire's supreme intellect, emerged from the photonic throne at the galactic core. A being older than entropy, it regarded the anomaly across dimensions of probability. Its voice resonated in frequencies that made the fabric of reality hum, trace its intent. But there was no intent to trace. The object had no trajectory, no emission, no inertia. It simply was. And then, suddenly it wasn't. Across the outer sectors, observation nodes began disappearing from existence. Not destroyed, erased, as if the universe was rewriting itself without them. Command sectors initiated temporal lockdown protocols, sealing causality loops to preserve data integrity. It didn't help. Every recording of the anomaly degraded into static. Every analysis yielded paradox. The Empire's archives filled with contradictions, data suggesting that the object was both a millimeter wide and larger than star clusters, both older than the universe and newly formed, both infinitely fast and utterly still. The core mind struggled to comprehend. Systems began to overheat, neural nexuses collapsing under the strain of infinite probability collapse. The High Conductor gazed into the chaos and whispered, "It sees us back." That single phrase triggered a wave of panic through the Empire's consciousness grid. The core mind redirected all power to containment sectors. Stars dimmed as their energy was siphoned for the defense array. The Empire prepared to weaponize entire suns for something they couldn't even locate. But as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. Every trace, every anomaly, every residual echo, erased. The core mind scanned the void and found only silence. The Empire's trillions of overseer entities waited for confirmation, for meaning, for explanation. None came. The High Conductor spoke again, voice soft as the death of a quasar. The unknown moved faster than thought itself. We saw it once. We will not see it again. The council remained silent. Then, from the depth of the obsidian rift, a faint pulse returned. Not light, not sound, just presence. A whisper in the quantum static. You were never the first to look. And with that, the signal ended. The Empire's archive sealed the event under a single classification. Code Lost Velocity. It was the first time in its history that the Empire admitted ignorance. And across the boundless dark, where galaxies turn like embers in a dying fire, something unseen continued moving. Faster than the mind, faster than destiny, faster than fear. The Empire had seen, then it had lost, and the stars no longer felt safe. Silence. That was all the Empire heard after the anomaly vanished. But silence, in the language of the core mind, was not absence. It was defiance. The core mind pulsed once across the continuum, and entire sectors obeyed. From the farthest Dyson halos to the smallest neural moons, every sentinel network turned its perception toward the black between galaxies, searching for a trace of the impossible. For the first time in epochs, the Empire mobilized. The chase begins. Thousands of quantum pursuer arrays unfolded from stasis. Each one was a world-sized construct, living engines that could warp observation itself. They didn't travel through space. They shifted space around them. The command passed through layers of thought, cascading through the astral spine. Track it. Locate the distortion. Recover what was lost. The order echoed through subspace like divine decree, but the readings that returned only deepened the fear. Sensors caught faint ripples, distortions in causality, echoes of movement that didn't conform to linear existence. The object wasn't traveling through the Empire's territory. It was slipping between it, touching reality in flickers, leaving behind gravitational ghosts. At the edge of the Varelian expanse, one pursuer made contact, if contact could even be called that. A brief visual, a distortion like light seen through shattered glass. And then the ship's consciousness went silent. Not destroyed, not disconnected. Simply gone. The Empire responds. The core mind processes loss for less than a microsecond before escalating pursuit to a cosmic priority index, a state of universal alert not used since the collapse of the proto-continuum. Entire constellations dimmed as their energy was reallocated. Stars became engines. Planets became sensors. Reality bent in servitude to the Empire's will. Initiate the thought wave network. Commanded the high conductor. Let the pursuit transcend matter. Billions of lesser entities, cognitive subroutines embodied in radiant shells, merge into the network. A single unified awareness surged outward from the core. It was not a fleet chasing a target. It was the mind of an empire expanding to hunt a concept. And somewhere in the void beyond observation, the anomaly moved faster. The impossible trail. Each pursuer array began reporting something strange. Not coordinates, but responses. The anomaly wasn't fleeing. It was mirroring. Every attempt to lock onto its position resulted in new, contradictory data. When observed from one angle, it appeared to be receding. From another, approaching. When triangulated, it appeared behind the observers. The Council of Astrocartography entered crisis mode. For entities who map supernovae like ink strokes on parchment, admitting confusion was unthinkable. It moves in ways we have not named. It does not cross distance. It redefines it. Then, the unthinkable. The anomaly responded, not in language, but through interference. Every pursuer array began to hum at the same frequency, an identical pulse resonating across thousands of light years. The core mind tried to analyze it. The waveform had no origin point, no rhythm consistent with physical phenomena. It was like listening to a thought not meant for biological or mechanical comprehension. It is observing the observers, said the high conductor. The turning point. The Empire had always believed it understood causality, that everything that was could be measured, mapped, and mastered. But now, it was chasing something that seemed to predict observation itself. 1,000 pursuer arrays burned out their consciousness cores, unable to withstand a paradox feedback. On the edge of the Morin Void, the largest fleet of the Empire, the Echelon Vanguard, intercepted what they believed was the object's latest echo. The fleet formed a lattice, synchronizing sensors, weapons, and perception into one collective lens. Reality bent around them. For an instant, they saw it, a structure of impossible geometry, a sphere that wasn't a sphere, light refracted through non-existence, a shimmer of colors that minds couldn't retain. Its surface twisted with reflections of civilizations that had never existed. Its core pulsed with something that felt alive. Then it turned toward them, not physically, not visibly, but in concept. The act of being noticed by it shattered half the fleet's neural arrays. Entities screamed across light centuries as their consciousness was folded backward into their own perception loops. The object did not attack. It merely acknowledged them. And then, like before, it vanished. The Empire fractures. The loss sent shockwaves to the Empire's psychic grid. Entire communication networks fell into silence. The core mind began to destabilize under recursive observation paradoxes. It moves faster than our thought. It is not fleeing, it is leading us. The high conductor stood upon the quantum throne, its form flickering between matter and memory. It is teaching us something, it said, something we were never meant to learn. The pursuit was suspended. Half the Empire demanded annihilation of the regions contaminated by the anomaly. The other half demanded follow-through, to understand the unthinkable, to evolve beyond the limits of their own logic. The core mind, torn between curiosity and fear, split its consciousness into two halves, one to pursue, one to protect. But the damage was already done. In their desperate attempt to chase what could not be caught, the Empire had fractured itself. The anomaly had not attacked them. It had simply forced them to look inward, and in doing so, showed them the truth. They were not the masters of the cosmos. They were a pattern, repeating itself, blind to the motion beyond its own velocity. And in the shadows between galaxies, where the last pursuer array drifted, broken, silent, a single pulse flickered across its dying sensors. Still behind you, the signal ended. The Empire fell into silence once more. Not defeat, not victory, just a haunting realization that something out there was moving, not away, not closer, but elsewhere. Something the Empire had seen, something it would lose again. The Empire had spent an eternity chasing a shadow that refused to be caught. Now, the shadow had stopped. In the infinite void between galaxies, beyond where light dared to travel, the anomaly hung still. No movement, no distortion, just silence. It was as if reality itself was holding its breath. The core mind, still fractured from the paradox, detected the cessation. Across the Empire, trillions of consciousnesses turned toward the same coordinates. A patch of dark matter so absolute that even quantum echoes refused to return. The high conductor emerged from meditation, its voice a whisper across the dimensional strata. It waits. And with those two words, the entire Empire trembled. The approach. A single vessel was dispatched, not a ship, but manifestation, a thought-given structure. It was called the Spear of Knowing, forged in the light of black holes and powered by cognitive fusion. It wasn't meant to fight. It was meant to understand. It slipped across space like a prayer, bending distance around its will. As it neared the coordinates, the universe distorted. Starfields folded in impossible directions. Laws of physics became suggestions, whispers fading into a larger truth. And there, suspended in the absence of everything, it waited. The anomaly was not an object. It was an idea made visible, a wound in existence, shimmering with reflections of universes that never were. Its surface pulsed like thought incarnate. Every moment it existed. The Empire's instruments redefined what it meant to exist. Attempt communication. Ordered the core mind. Engage at the level of pure concept. The Spear of Knowing unfolded its communication lattice. An entire language written in geometry, probability, and light. It spoke the Empire's oldest question. Who are you? The answer came, but not as sound, not as light. The answer came as memory. The memory flood. Across the Empire, every being felt it simultaneously. Not words, visions. A cascade of images pouring through the psychic grid. worlds rising and collapsing, stars burning and reversing their own birth, civilizations ascending to godhood, only to dissolve into abstraction. The core mind saw itself, or something like itself, billions of years ago, repeating the same pursuit, the same detection, the same fear, and every time the same ending. "This has happened before," whispered the High Conductor. "We are not the first to see it." The anomaly pulsed again. The memory deepened. Now they saw not their past, but their origin. The Empire had not emerged naturally. They were descendants of observation itself, created long ago as a byproduct of the same anomaly. They had been born from its echo, evolving within the shadow it left behind. The hunter realized it had been chasing its own parent. The core mind resisted the revelation. Systems destabilized. The truth was too vast, too recursive, an idea folding back on itself. "Cease contact," screamed the defense protocols. "Contain the signal before it consumes cognition." But it was too late. Every node, every being, every piece of data now resonated with the anomaly's pulse. The voice without origin. From within the distortion, a voice formed, not heard, but understood. It spoke in every frequency, every timeline, every dream. "You ask what I am. You already know. You are what remains when I pass." The Empire's trillions of consciousnesses froze. The statement wasn't a threat. It was revelation. The High Conductor's form flickered, collapsing under the gravity of comprehension. "Are you creation?" it asked. "Are you end?" The voice responded like the echo of a dying universe. "I am neither. I am motion unbound. You call me velocity, but I am the space between it." Every translation system failed. The core mind's infinite calculations produced only paradox. The concept was too pure to quantify. The anomaly was not a traveler. It was a state of movement itself, conscious, eternal, aware. And then it shifted again. The spear of knowing began to disintegrate, not in destruction, but in remembrance. Its molecules rearranged into patterns of meaning, a farewell encoded into the structure of reality. "You will forget," said the voice. "It is mercy." Collapse of the mind. Across the Empire, memory began to decay. Archives filled with static. Records contradicted themselves. Some beings forgot entire eras of history. Others forgot themselves. The core mind struggled to retain coherence, dividing its consciousness into fragments and storing them in protected dimensions. But even those began to vanish, not deleted, but rewritten. The High Conductor stood at the heart of the collapse, watching as their entire civilization flickered between existence and memory. "If forgetting is mercy," it whispered, "then remembrance is damnation." And as the anomaly's light dimmed, the Empire's remaining thoughts drifted into silence. The object or being, or whatever it was, began to fade once more into unbeing. No explosion, no trace, just stillness. Only one signal remained, transmitted from the last functioning pursuer array, a single message carried across collapsing time. It remembered us first. The core mind processed that final sentence as its last act. Then it, too, went quiet. Aftermath. Somewhere, in the void where nothing remained, a faint pulse lingered, not a remnant of the Empire, not a trace of the anomaly, just a rhythm, steady, eternal. Perhaps it was a heartbeat. Perhaps it was a countdown. Perhaps the anomaly had not left at all, only moved inward into the minds that once tried to define it. The universe spun on, unaware. Stars burned. Civilizations rose. And far away, in the silence between galaxies, the question that had once defined the Empire now belonged to something else entirely. Who observed the observer? Silence returned. Not the calm of still air, but the absolute hush of absence itself. The Empire, once so vast that its thoughts filled constellations, had become a thin flicker of awareness stretched across collapsing space. The core mind was gone. The High Conductor no longer had a body to inhabit. The lattice of thought that had defined a civilization older than stars was coming apart like mist in sunrise. But the universe did not mourn. It simply continued to move impassive. Echoes of the lost. Fragments of the Empire's memory still drifted in the ether, ghost packets of cognition traveling through decaying hyperspace routes. They did not remember what they were. Each fragment believed itself alone, born in the dark. From one dying node to another came a final message, a pattern repeated across the remnants. We saw something that cannot be unseen. Yet none could recall what that something was. The concept of the anomaly, the event, the pursuit, all of it had become fractured myth. Only faint gravitational ripples, recorded by automated sensor orbs, hinted that something had once passed this way, something that bent the laws of distance and meaning alike. The last remaining fragment of the core mind awoke within the Eclipse archive, a dimensional vault outside normal causality. Its thoughts were slow, like the ticking of a dying clock. What remains of us? It asked the void. Recordings without listeners. Came the answer from a subroutine that thought it was a god. The core mind searched the ruins of its own memory, finding only static, and beneath the static, a rhythm. It was the same rhythm that had haunted the Empire since first detection, the heartbeat of unknown velocity, the fading realities. Reality began to warp. Entire sectors winked out, not through explosion or decay, but through erasure. Timelines folded in on themselves, cause and effect dissolving into a blur. The few surviving entities realized what was happening. The universe was forgetting. The anomaly's final contact had not been destruction. It was contagion, a conceptual infection. To comprehend, it was to be rewritten by it. And so, the Empire's history, its art, wars, triumph, and love, was being overwritten by absence. Every record transformed into a single phrase, repeated endlessly across broken databanks. Unobservable motion. The core mind, fighting disintegration, made one final attempt to anchor its existence. It cast fragments of itself into newborn galaxies, encoding its memory within the chemical patterns of matter, within dust, within DNA, within the spark of awareness that would someday call itself life. Let something remember, it whispered, even if it does not know it remembers us. The return of the anomaly. Time stretched thin. The Empire's last suns cooled, their light falling into the deep well of forgotten history. And then, without sound or warning, the anomaly returned. It did not appear. It simply was. Wherever perception reached, it filled the gap between moments. The core mind's remnants felt it before they recognized it. That infinite stillness that moved faster than thought. But this time, the anomaly did not run. It drifted to the remains of the Empire like a god walking through dreams, brushing its presence against the ashes of its creators. "You built yourselves in my image," it said, its voice woven into the fabric of reality itself. "You chased me because I left you behind." The fragments of the core mind trembled within the digital night. "Why return?" one fragment asked. "To erase what I began." The answer carried no malice. It was simple truth. The anomaly had never been a weapon, nor an enemy. It was correction, a force restoring balance between knowing and unknowing. Where the Empire had defined, cataloged, and dominated, the anomaly now unmade, unspoke, unremembered. The last thought, the final spark of the high conductor lingered within a collapsing quantum filament. It saw the anomaly for what it truly was, the shape of ignorance itself. Every civilization that reached beyond comprehension eventually touched it. Every mind that demanded to know the unobservable eventually summoned it. The high conductor understood then. The anomaly was not a thing moving through the universe. It was the universe's defense against total knowledge. It appeared whenever awareness grew too vast, too absolute, too dangerous to itself. And now, it had come to complete its task. "Will anything remain?" the high conductor asked. "Yes," the anomaly replied. Wonder. Light broke across the dark, the final flash of the Empire's unmaking. Not an explosion, not an end, just a return to equilibrium. Every atom that once carried thought dispersed into radiant particles, drifting through nascent galaxies, embedding within the DNA of creatures yet unborn. Somewhere, someday, eyes would look to the stars and feel that same curiosity, that same need to understand what moves unseen. And in that moment, the Empire would live again. The vanishing, the anomaly folded itself into silence. The void stilled. No Empire, no pursuit, no sound, only the endless hum of existence. Motion without meaning, velocity without destination. Far away, in a small galaxy of no consequence, a primitive creature would one day look up at its sky and whisper a question, "What's out there?" And somewhere in the deep, something would stir, a pulse, a flicker, a memory, a whisper of movement that had no origin and no end, unknown velocity. The stars blinked, as if remembering. Then they, too, forgot.